A clash between pro-Russian demonstrators and police in eastern Ukraine is another sign the crisis is deepening. Russia's decision to go ahead with Sunday's referendum for Crimea to secede from Ukraine triggered a quick U.S. response. President Obama ordered more sanctions, freezing the U.S. assets of 7 Russian officials and 4 Ukrainians who helped destabilize Ukraine.
We are imposing sanctions on specific individuals responsible for undermining the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and government of Ukraine. We're making it clear that there are consequences for their actions.
Russian President Vladimir Putin is not among those named, but the list includes some of his top advisors and others U.S. officials describe as Russian government cronies. U.S. officials hope the sanctions, along with a drop in the Russian stock market and a falling currency, will cause Moscow to change course in Crimea. President Obama warns there could be more sanctions on the way.
Going forward, we can calibrate our response based on whether Russia chooses to escalate or to de-escalate the situation. Now, I believe there's still a path to resolve this situation diplomatically in a way that addresses the interests of both Russia and Ukraine.
The U.S. wants Russia to pull its troops in Crimea back to their bases, allow international monitors, and open dialogue with the Ukrainian government. There is no sign Russia is budging, and the concern is that after the referendum, its next move may be to annex Crimea. In the meantime, Ukraine's parliament on Monday approved a plan to mobilize 40,000 reservists. Luis Ramirez, VOA News, at the White House.
Hey guys, Dabu 7, June 4th, 2013, in Russia warns Obama that a global war may be coming very soon if they do not stop Monsanto. Now, for those of you that are not aware, many countries have banned Monsanto GMO foods from coming into their country. Russia, one of the largest countries to lead this pack, is saying that there are chemicals that are put inside of these agents that are killing the bees, flowers, and that just one kernel of corn that has some of these agents on it can kill a bird. One kernel of corn. You have Switzerland, France, Italy, Russia, Slovenia, Ukraine, Japan. Now you have South Korea joining Japan on banning U.S. wheat imports after shocking GMO contamination announcement by the USDA. And yes, did you hear about this on your evening news? Bet you didn't. It's why I do what I do, folks. They're out there spreading this genetically modified food in our country of America. Do none of you people realize that every other country on this planet is rejecting Monsanto? The only country that is not doing a damn thing about it is the United States of America. They are allowing this to happen. You and your children are eating this stuff. Monsanto has been around a long time. They're worldwide. And if all these people in all these countries are banning them, well, where do you think all their products are going? To you and your family. It is very disturbing. And it's so disturbing that Vladimir Putin was so ticked off when John Kerry got to Russia that he made him sit for hours while he cooled down because he was so pissed about this whole thing. Didn't even want to talk to him. Then when he did walk in the room and talk to John Kerry with his long face, he just basically went off. And he said, you can go back and tell Obama that we're not dealing with none of your stuff, none of your products, none of your imports that have any of this GMO stuff, and that if he doesn't stop it, it could lead to world war. This is real deal, folks. Because once you start planting these things and they pollinate to another plant, everything becomes contaminated. Everything. So you want to talk about a worldwide famine? They're creating it. Within 20 years, if they keep this ball rolling, there will be. By 2020, there will be a worldwide famine, and they will have control of all the world's resources because they basically gave you a bunch of fakes. Russia's pissed. I believe that you should be too. I'll leave links because this affects you and your family. And trust me, it bothers me to know that There's people in this country that don't even care about what's going on, and there's a leader of another country. He's not even a leader of our people, and he cares more than our own damn president. I'm not saying he's a god or he's an angel, but I'm telling you, he cares more than this man. The communist does. Can you believe that? Anyway, I'll leave links, guys. Y'all stay safe. Till next time, Dabu 7 with some underground world news.
In an offensive against the media war. But if you want to avoid only these two parts, and if you really want to avoid people get too irrational in your own support camp, you really need to be self-critical. And if you are so, you don't damage yourself. Self-criticism is always very, very valuable for those guys who are strong in themselves. And Russia can and is strong in itself. If it's strong enough to throw 11 billion American or foreign bonds on the market, it is also strong to throw self-criticism as some kind of firewall, securing backbone content bonds on the media information market. And that is how real media war is working. If you are self-critical, you are strong. And you need to be self-critical, even if you know that some people will misuse your information. And so you don't get too polarized. And my experience of the last weeks is that the people in the Russia camp, and I would even call it, and it's very dangerous to have something like a camp, a Russia camp, the people in my network, and two of them I quitted my discussions with, not because I don't like them and they do good work, even to counter the media bias of the West, but they get too one-sided. And if this is also reasoned by some kind of more Russian-like emotionalizing and solidarizing media, you see that there is something like a reasoned and reasonable point of criticism of polarization and politicization, and maybe even more also one-sidedness of the direct Russian media from the country in itself. But this is totally different from Russia today, and anyone who is taking the Russian translated videos sees that there's a totally different tonnage, a totally different intonation. There's some people really in a Western-like style simply painting the other side. And it could be even good to solidarize in Russia in a different way. And so Liz Wall's criticism not to air Ron Paul, and this is really something which should be taken serious, and I'm very thankful for the Corbett report and even for Ray Dawson, not to one-sidedness take the side of Russia, but also to be critical and say Russia has its own interests, and they're not all holy guys who didn't do anything wrong in Russia and the government. Putin is no holy person. I'm not a holy person too. I'm a Christian, but I get sanctified, and no one is really expecting that Vladimir Putin is something like the rider on the white horse who can protect the West from everything and anything. And this is the impression you get if people get, and they even without wanting, they get emotionalized, solidarized, polarized, according to Vladimir Putin. But I would really do one very, very big, there's a big difference between this solidarization in Russia around Putin, because it's more reasoned. It is made with more facts. It's not based on so much lies than the Western media spin, and you can really see the difference between the different solidarization spins. If you have these two spins, it's still dangerous if you have this polarization around Russia, around Putin, pro-Russia thing, if you don't have the backbone of self-criticism and reforms inside that. And for that reason, somebody criticizing like Abby Martin is pure gold. And it's even more pure gold to have someone like Liz Wall when she is able to, and for that I would simply name it as a mistake of Russia today, to air the thing with Dr. Ron Paul. And a good and strong and bold media reaction to this would be, what should Russia today now do? It should prove the opposite. Air the things Ron Paul has said to Liz Wall. And if you couldn't do so, you simply take this transcript and you read it, and you try to work on this issue. You really try to show that this could also be something where you, as a news channel, can be polarized. And so you take the glue out of the fire. If Barbara Nuland is trying to put glue against Russia inside the fire, Russia today is not doing, we are taking our own fire and gluing it, and now we see what is the biggest fire. No, you take the glue out of the fire, because you prove that you are self-critical. You can hurt yourself. And yes, if you do a mistake, or there is something in it, even if it's not a mistake, like Liz Wall has described it as a mistake, and so it's not a hurt with a knife, but something like a peaks. You still are able, because there is not so much truth in the criticism of Liz Wall than she made out of it, from my viewpoint, you are still able to do so. Be strong and self-critical would be my advice if asked for, or my thought about Russia today and about Russia and about Russian media. And, well, and I really am sad about that, because I couldn't make my points clear in discussing these things in my German pro-Russia networks. So I really decided not to work any content inside this anymore, because I got attacked there. And I've not gotten attacked because these people have been brainwashed in the way American media sometimes brainwashes. No, but they still have been polarized in a way with more truth in it. Yes, I could understand their point. It is very, very important to know the points of Russia, and I can agree to much of their points, but I still don't want to be polarized. I don't want to stand there with a big head and say, Russia, 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 and I don't want to, as a German and even as a Russian, I don't want to hold my Russia flag. Why should I do so? Even as a good Russian, if I would be in Russia, or a good Russian fan, I don't want to have one German flag here and a Russia flag and flag both of them. No, my way is not the polarization highway, because it's too fast, it's not sustainable, and it's crushing against the media war and wall of divide and conquer. If you use the method of those who you criticize, you will always lose this battle. And so from my viewpoint, Russia needs to be self-critical, it needs to be rational, it needs to have some kind of different media even inside Russia itself. So if you always get yourself emotionalized, and these guys are not one group, they are not all in this group, and so it's only an indicator, not all of this group, which have been in my networks, are in the same way and mood being polarized, by no means. And most of them rationally are simply countering all the media bias, and then they take the media reports of the West, and then they say, well, this is again this and this and this media spin and manipulation. And they are right with their criticism, but don't get polarized. Because if you do get polarized, you don't win if the media bias and the spin is against you like it is right now, according to Russia. Because then if you do something wrong, who is going to take it out of context? As we all have seen, the media. They don't forgive and they don't forget, even if in the same way Anonymous is also not forgiving and forgetting. The media is simply taking it, and they don't even do it with a right to do so. And so this is not something which is something if you're that you are not really strong and clear in your position. That's why I said, according to Yanukovych, and I made this point month ago, or at least weeks ago, and same thing according to Russia, you need to have a clear red line, you need to have a clear, strong position in acting, not in words. You don't have to be the pussy always walking back, or someone who's fearing. No, you have to be clear, you have to draw a red line, you have to show the border to the Americans. But if you do so, if you prepare for doing your red line thing against the really mighty American, German, European media and money and corporate interest spin machine, you really should be able to be self-critical, and you should do the best out of the negative things. If you get hurt, you don't fight back in the typical way, because if you fight back in the linear way, and Russia today did a really fair point from my viewpoint with their news, with what they have declared, but then it's always too late. And for sure it's a shame that Abby Martin is mistaken and misused in that way, as she has been. And surely she has also been part of, without her willing and wanting, of the thing which Liz Wall has made out of it. And so it's a spin in itself, it's a spin coming out of a spin to put some anger between Russia Today and Abby Martin, because those in American media, they don't like Abby Martin be hosted by Russia Today or anyone. They don't really like anything Abby Martin is saying, so they're not quoting her, and building and pushing her up because she is a hero against Russia, or because they like her, or she's such a trusted media brand for them. She is, but anyway. And so you really you need to have some kind of self-critical backbone, and well, I would simply discuss openly what Liz Wall has criticized. I would simply go to the root of it and I would simply say, okay, we check why she has gone. We self-critically question ourselves if we are not able to be, and that's something that people will forgive. Even people who are pro-America will forgive this. If you're honestly going to that, and if you say, okay, we ask ourselves, because we are state division and we have directions here, and this is something which everyone will understand and will also see the same way, and then there is no big deal out of it. The media has spinned, I don't know, they spin, and they have done so, and they will do, but this is a good counter, and you prepare yourself not to have the thing again. And for the last point, self-criticism, I guess Russia today has self-criticism in itself. So even why I got into a disagreement with my pro-Russian friends is why they say, why they misquote me, I speak about more self-criticism. If you watch, for example, and even I, for myself, sometimes ask myself if this is a wise move to invite guys like they do on Russia Today, for example, especially on Worlds Apart and Sophie and Co. They have really self-critical elements in itself. They invite and do interviews in a much, much broader scale than every American media, corporate media would do. They are hugely self-critical. If you watch these two shows, for example, you will find, I don't know, maybe 15 to 20% of the guests they have are clearly able to build up their own bubble, media lie, bias world. And so, if you then listen to Worlds Apart, I forgot the name of this Russian host. It's not Shevardnadze's daughter, Sophie Shevardnadze. She's doing Sophie and Co, as the name of the show already says, and it's, if you watch this, well, that's nonsense. And even what I say is then nonsense, because they are self-critical then. But also do it not only in the shows, but do it on the news. Do it in Russian news, in Russia itself. Don't polarize in the way you do, but also be self-critical. And then reform things in Russia what I would reform and Western people would reform. And why not doing so? Because if you're strong, and Russia is strong. It has unified in itself. And so this is also something which needs to be mentioned, that Russia is then using this whole thing to solidarize in itself. If you have an outer enemy, it's good for Putin to solidarize with that outer media bias. And you see that he is solidarizing with more or less truth. And there's a huge difference to solidarize in lies, as according to the Iraq war and according to Syria, when the Western media do so. And if you compare it, and if you're doing it on a basis of truth, of much truth, or at least in the main line truth, which is also politicized, because what is truth? Truth is politicized, sometimes more or less. What is the fact? With the snipers, for example, it's not only nationalists and neo-Nazis. So the overemphasis on the how would you say that? How the group is, how the parts of the groups are, how the group is constructed in the West Ukraine, in Kiev. There are nationalists inside, yes, and mainly it is driven and made militarily successful by these nationalists, and they are Nazis, yes, and for Svoboda members in the government is more or less a clear color of a nationalist interim, not really legitimated interim government, but it's still not good to solidarize in it and to polarize in it. And well, I have a good easy word, because I'm not a Russian and I'm not Putin, and I don't have to win this war, even according to my own population. And for sure it has a good reason to do so, because Russia knows that the spin is in the end also trying to spin against Vladimir Putin inside Russia to destabilize, to do regime change. And for that reason, he tries to make the most out of the attacks against Russia inside the Ukraine, if he voted and sees this whole thing also as an attempt against Russia. And he is right in doing so. It is targeting Russia, for sure. If you use and instrumentalize and emotionalize Ukrainian nationalists who have always been anti-Russian, this is from the first day on something against Russia. And by that, it's easily understood why Russia is so pissed off or is so angry. And for last time, I still need to strongly request in the discussion and debate in the West, as in Russia, as in the Ukraine, as in the internet, to focus more on the comparison of the two offers in the best outcome of the Ukrainian. There is no real debate about what is the offer of Russia. I'm not able to compare the offer of the IMF, of Europe. There's only some numbers and some bubbles around in the media argument world, so that the West Ukrainian, they have no idea how to compare what is the best thing for us. How is the best way out of our crisis? Is it the Europe IMF offer? What is Russia going to do with us if we vote for Russia in Crimea? What is Russia going to do if we simply do a different thing like we do right now? How to end and escape this radicalization media trap put into place by the Ukrainian government inside the Ukrainian media. You need to find a way to counter this. You need to find a way, and not only with saying that they are nationalists. No, you need to make a clear offer to the Ukraine, and you need to make the offer in an open media debate, because if you simply make an offer to the interim government, you then kill Yanukovych and you value up someone who's illegitimate, who is not legitimate, excuse my bad English, like Yasenyuk, and which you don't like. So you don't make the offer directly to him, you do it beside the diplomatic way, you simply do it openly in the media. And that's, well, classical diplomacy will possibly speak against that, because you will then throw your if you would compare it with something like a poker game, you would too easily throw yourself on the table. But I don't think in this surrounding it would be like that if you do it in a reserved and good way, and if you really compare the things, and if you only attack the American offer and the IMF offer and show the negative things in that, that's the one side. But where's the Russian offer different? What did you offer already? What is the reform thing? What is the concrete plan? Do some kind of interviews from my viewpoint with those guys, and try to reach the people in the West Ukraine and in Europe, that there is a door open back to a unified Ukraine in a peaceful way, solving this thing, and in a peaceful way to really build up, as I've said in different videos, the Ukrainian economy. And so, well, and the last thing I wanted to mention is the people who then attacked me, they simply said I shouldn't say anything to that because I'm not into that materia, or I don't have the authority to do so. And I say, well, that's not the way I think and I work, and that's not the way I want. According to myself, people speak about myself, and that's not the way I function. If I invest myself and criticize Western media bias, I also invest myself, and Russia has not asked for that, but anyway, I still invest myself in criticism of Russia too, because if you do media critics, you are not one-sided, and if you are one-sided, that's many, many times the proof that you are not really trustable, or that what you say is not really balanced. So, and in this case, it is simply a strategic mistake of Russia not to discuss this. Self-criticism and a concrete offer. For, I guess, the 5th, 6th or 7th time, I call for this and ask for this, according to the Ukraine, in German videos, in English videos now, and I still, if Yanukovych would have done what I try to work out, which would be a solution to that problem, he would be still in power, and the transition would be peaceful to elections. And then we come to a next problem. Maybe Russia is even not interested anymore in something like in Ukraine, who is, in a way, more dealing with Europe and more dealing with America and also Russia, because they think they can win the thing and split the thing, and that's better for them because they can draw the red line in a different way. If they have Crimea, eastern Ukraine, back again in their own country, this could also be some kind of calculation which would really work, because the majority of the people in the east and in Crimea will clearly decide and vote for Russia, and that's their fair choice from my viewpoint. And so it's no attack on the Ukrainian country integrity. I think that's nonsense. If someone is deciding to split apart from a nation, that's their fair choice. If Eastern Germany wants to be Eastern Germany, a free, confederated part of Germany, that's fine with the rest. I don't have anything against Eastern Germany split again from Western Germany. There's no world breaking together, or I'm not breaking together because someone is breaking apart. And so and it's a logical consequence normally. The West has escalated the so-called and initiated the so-called revolution, which is an uprising and financed and controlled uprising using nationalists against Russia. And so if this is firing back right now, they will already have known this. This is the first sad thing. They have priced in the separation, and they give a damn shit. The people groups who want to get land, who want to speculate with Ukrainian agricultural property, with land property, who want to build up the new European defense line, who want to sell weapons, they are happy with a split Ukraine. America has no problems in the end with a split Ukraine. Russia should have a problem with a split Ukraine because it's losing its bridge point to Europe. And so it needs to do different, but it needs to do and needs to be in the offense. And for that reason, I think it's not too bad if you really also accept or support the split of Crimea apart from the Ukraine. And so it's a dilemma in the end. Should Russia accept its influence only in the east and in Crimea, which is guaranteed from my viewpoint? It's not manipulated because they are Russians, and I think it's better to do the way and to target the way I've described with different offer to the whole of Ukraine without pressuring the west of the Ukraine or using the instruments with the gas pipeline. That's not good for Germany, it's not good for Russia, it's not good for Europe, because the whole trade relation with Europe is on stake, it's not good for Germany, it's not good for Russia, because the American interest is very clear to get fracking inside Europe, inside the Western.
This is the red alert. This is not the threat. This is actually the declaration of war to my country. We are on the brink of the disaster. There was no any reason for the Russian Federation to invade Ukraine. And we believe that our Western partners and the entire global community will support the territorial integrity and unity of Ukraine, and will do everything they can in order to stop the military conflict provoked by Russian Federation in Europe.
And the president was never serious about it. Could I mention another issue to you? Did you hear about Mr. Putin's statement about me today?
No. What did George Bush used to call him? Pooty Poot. What has he said about you?
Well, when the demonstrations took place a few days ago, I said, "Dear Vlad," I tweeted, "Dear Vlad, the Arab Spring is coming to a neighborhood near you." Well, there's, if you get it, we'll send it to you, but it's an AP story by a guy named Vladimir. Putin rejects any redo of fraud-tainted vote. Apparently he was on a call-in show, which he does once a year, and he talks about how he says there's nothing wrong with the election, etc. And he says Putin also lashed out at U.S. Senator John McCain, who had goaded him with a Twitter posted saying, quote, "The Arab Spring is coming to a neighborhood near you." Quote, listen to this, quote, "He has the blood of peaceful civilians on his hands, and he can't live without the kind of disgusting, repulsive scenes like the killing of Gaddafi," Putin said, referring to McCain's role as a combat pilot and prisoner of war in Vietnam. Quote, "Mr. McCain was captured and they kept him not just in prison but in a pit for several years," he said. "Anyone in his place would go nuts."
Well,
I'm not making that up.
You've been insulted by a mafia kingpin. I wouldn't go traveling over there right now if I were you.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm not going to ask for a visa.
Listen, while you're on the lines, one other thing.
But by the way, this reaction, he is very, very unsettled by this demonstrations in Russia. On December 24th, they are planning huge demonstrations all over the country. It'll be very interesting. Most of the so-called Russian experts say that this will come to nothing. Well, they said the same thing about Tunisia and Libya and Egypt and Syria. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Now, before you.
So what could trigger a possible use of military force? Of course, it's only in extreme case. As for legitimacy, as you know, the legitimate and President Yanukovych requested Russia to use military force to defend the lives and health of Ukrainians. So our major concern is the orgy that is happening and so many nationalists and radical extremists that are rampant on the streets of Kiev. And you, the media, might have seen that one of the regions was chained on a square, handcuffed to some fixture. In the winter, it was cold, it was freezing cold. He was later holed up in a basement. He was tortured then. So what's happening? How do you define that? Is this democracy? Is this an expression of democracy? He was appointed just recently in December. That's governor. And even if all authorities, are corrupt, as we might suppose, as might presume, has not been able to, rob anything. But when they seized the building of the Party of Regions, there was none there. There was just one technical guy there, and he told the protesters, we've got a woman, I'm an IT guy, I have nothing to do with politics. Could you let a woman out? He was shot dead right there. The second IT guy, was forced into the basement, and they threw Molotov cocktails at him and was burned alive. So when we see that, we realize what is a major concern for the Ukrainians, ethnic Russian and ethnic Ukrainians, Russian-speaking people who reside in the southern and eastern regions of Ukraine. So this is their concern, this lawlessness. And when we see that this kind of lawlessness starts in eastern Ukraine, and when they ask us for help, and we do have the official request by the legitimate president, then we reserve the right to use all of the means to defend these people. And we believe that this is legitimate, perfectly legitimate. This is an extreme means. We believe, and we will believe, that Ukraine is not our closest neighbor. It's our fraternal nation. As for our armed forces, it's brothers in arms, friends. Many of them have known each other for many years. And I'm convinced that Ukrainian personnel and the Russian personnel will not be will not be defending different sides of barricades. They will stand on the one side of the barricades.
Are you concerned that a war may break out? No, this does not concern me because we are not going to go to war with the Ukrainian people. But there's the Ukrainian army. Okay, listen to me. Listen to me closely. I want you to understand what I say. If we make this decision, we will make it in order to protect the people of Ukraine. And how can army shoot at their own people? How can they shoot at women and children? Our soldiers will be standing in front of them. Who can give such an order?